Under the cold fluorescent lights of Glasswell Tower, single father Ethan Cole is fixing a leaking pipe on the 18th floor, where million-dollar suits run the city. He just wants to finish his shift and get home to his little girl. But when a terrified scream pierces the silence from the women's bathroom on the executive floor, everything stops. Behind that door is Victoria Lang, the powerful CEO being forced by two men to sign a contract. Ethan has only a wrench in his hand and one choice: walk away or step in and lose everything. The elevator doors opened with a mechanical hiss onto the 18th floor of Glasswell Tower. Ethan Cole stepped out, toolbox in one hand, work light in the other. His navy coveralls bore the faded logo of Metro Building Services across the back, a company that paid him $18 an hour to keep the plumbing functional in buildings where people earned that much per minute. It was 11:47 p.m. The executive floor was silent except for the ambient hum of the HVAC system and the distant groan of settling steel. Ethan preferred night shifts. Fewer people meant fewer conversations, fewer pitying looks when someone learned he was a single dad working two jobs. It also meant he could finish by 2 a.m. and catch 4 hours of sleep before Lila woke up for school. He knelt beside the water fountain near the restrooms. The facilities manager had reported a leak, probably a loose compression fitting. Simple fix. 20 minutes. Tops. Ethan set down his toolbox and clicked on his headlamp. The beam cut through the dimness, illuminating polished marble floors that probably cost more than his annual salary. He'd been in this building dozens of times over the past year, always after hours, always invisible to the people who worked here during the day. 5 years ago, he'd been on track to become a mechanical engineer. He'd had 2 semesters left at State University when Sarah's car was hit by a drunk driver on Route 9. She survived 3 days in ICU before the machines were turned off. Lila was 2 years old then. The medical bills and funeral costs consumed their savings. Student loans went into default. The degree remained unfinished. Ethan shook his head, forcing the memories back. He opened the access panel beneath the fountain and reached for his adjustable wrench. The fitting was indeed loose corrosion around the threads. He'd need to apply some thread seal tape and tighten it properly. As he worked, his mind wandered to tomorrow's schedule. Drop Lila at school by 8:15 a.m. Sleep until noon. Pick up his second shift at the warehouse from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pick up Lila from the neighbor who watched her for $20 a day, money he could barely spare but had no choice about. Make dinner, help with homework, bedtime, then back here by 10 p.m. The pattern had become automatic. Survive. Provide. Repeat. He was tightening the compression nut when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong in the sanitized silence of the executive floor. A voice, female, sharp with fear. Don't. Please don't. Ethan froze, wrench suspended in mid-turn. The sound had come from somewhere nearby. He stood slowly, clicking off his headlamp, letting his eyes adjust to the low ambient lighting. Another sound, male voices, low and urgent. Then a crash, something hitting a wall or floor. His heart rate accelerated. The sounds were coming from the women's restroom, about 30 feet down the hall. Every instinct screamed at him to finish the job and leave. He had Lila to think about. He couldn't afford trouble, couldn't afford to lose this contract. Metro Building Services was one of the few companies willing to work around his complicated schedule. But that voice, the fear in it, cut through his rationalizations like a blade. Ethan picked up his wrench. His hand trembled slightly as he moved toward the restroom. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though gravity itself was trying to hold him back. He reached the door, pressed his ear against it. Sign it, Victoria. Sign it, and this all goes away. I won't. You can't. A sharp sound. A slap, perhaps. Or a hand slamming against something. Ethan's grip tightened on the wrench. He thought of Lila, asleep in their one-bedroom apartment across town. He thought of the bills stacked on the kitchen counter. He thought of Sarah and what she would have wanted him to do. He pushed the door open, The scene that greeted Ethan Cole felt like stepping into someone else's nightmare. The women's restroom marble counters, designer fixtures, ambient lighting had been transformed into something else entirely. Near the far wall, by the row of sinks, Victoria Lang stood pressed against the counter, her tailored gray suit jacket torn at the shoulder. Two men in expensive suits flanked her, their positions calculated to block any escape. Papers were scattered across the wet floor, official-looking documents with corporate letterheads. A gold pen lay near the drain. The man on the left was tall, maybe 6'3", with the build of someone who paid for a personal trainer. His suit probably cost $3,000. His face was flushed with anger and something else, the entitled rage of someone unaccustomed to hearing no. Brandon Marks, according to the name Ethan would learn later. The other man, Derek Shaw, was shorter but stockier, with gray streaking his temples. He held a phone in one hand, aimed at Victoria like a weapon. "Just sign the transfer papers. Victoria, your signature or your reputation, choose one." Victoria's dark hair had come loose from its professional bun. Blood trickled from her split lip, but her eyes burned with defiance even as her hands shook. All three turned when the door opened. For a frozen moment, nobody moved. Ethan stood in the doorway, wrench hanging from his right hand, his work coveralls marking him immediately as someone who didn't belong in this room, in this conflict, in this world. "What the hell?" Brandon started. "Let her go." Ethan's voice came out steadier than he felt. His heart was hammering so hard, he could feel it in his throat. Derek laughed a sharp, ugly sound. "Oh, this is perfect. Security must be getting sloppy." He looked at Brandon. "Should we call them, or just handle this ourselves?" Brandon took a step toward Ethan, his expensive shoes squeaking slightly on the wet tile. "You're making a mistake, friend. This is a private business discussion. Turn around. Walk out. Forget you saw anything. She's bleeding." Ethan didn't move. "That's not a discussion." Victoria's eyes met his. In them, Ethan saw something that cut through his fear recognition. Not of him specifically, but of what he represented. A choice. A chance. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Help me." Brandon's jaw clenched. "You're a janitor. A nobody. You have no idea what you're stepping into." "Maybe not," Ethan said. "But I know what I'm looking at. And I'm not leaving without her." The wrench felt heavy in his hand. He'd never hit anyone in his life. He'd been in exactly one fight in high school, a confused scuffle that left both participants more embarrassed than injured. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a fighter. He was a 32-year-old single dad who just wanted to make rent and keep his daughter fed. But he was also a man who understood that some lines, once crossed, defined everything that came after. Derek moved toward the door, trying to position himself between Ethan and the exit. "You really want to do this? You really want to throw away your job, maybe your freedom, for someone you don't even know?" "I know enough," Ethan said. Brandon reached into his jacket. For a terrifying second, Ethan thought he was going for a weapon. Instead, he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling security. And when they get here, you're going to regret every second of this little hero fantasy." "Call them," Ethan said. His voice surprised him with its steadiness. "Call everyone. But she's leaving with me. Right now." He extended his hand toward Victoria. She pushed away from the counter, her legs shaky, and moved toward him. Brandon grabbed her arm. "Don't you dare." Ethan stepped forward, wrench raised, not threateningly but clearly, definitively. "Let her go." For one crystalline moment, the entire situation balanced on a knife's edge. Then Brandon released Victoria's arm, his face twisted with rage. Victoria stumbled past Derek and grasped Ethan's outstretched hand. Her fingers were ice-cold and trembling. They backed toward the door together, Ethan keeping himself between Victoria and the two men. He could hear Brandon already talking on his phone. Security, 18th floor. Women's restroom. We have an intruder. Possibly armed. Possibly dangerous. The word armed sent a chill through Ethan. He looked at the wrench in his hand, a tool that would now become evidence, would now become a weapon in someone else's narrative. They reached the hallway. Victoria could barely walk. Ethan supported her weight as they moved toward the elevator. Behind them, he heard Derek's voice. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, buddy." Maybe he had. Probably he had. But as they reached the elevator, and Ethan pressed the button with shaking fingers, as Victoria leaned against the wall and whispered, "Thank you," he knew he'd made the only choice he could have lived with. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. That's when the security team arrived. 4 security guards rounded the corner just as the elevator doors began to close. "Hold it," one of them shouted. Ethan's finger hovered over the closed door button. For a split second, he considered pressing it, letting the doors shut, taking Victoria down and out of the building. But running would only make things worse, would only confirm whatever story Brandon and Derek were already constructing. He let his hand fall. The doors reopened. The lead security guard, a broad-shouldered man named Patterson according to his nameplate, stepped into the elevator. His hand rested on his pepper spray canister. "Both of you, out. Now." "Officer, I'm Victoria Lang, CEO of—" "Ma'am, I know who you are. I also know there's been a report of an assault on the 18th floor. We need you both to come with us while we sort this out." Ethan and Victoria stepped out of the elevator. 2 guards took positions behind them, while Patterson and his partner led them back down the hallway. Toward the restroom, toward Brandon and Derek. The 2 men stood in the hallway now, their expressions carefully arranged. Brandon's suit jacket was torn at the sleeve, a detail Ethan didn't remember from before. Derek had a red mark on his cheek that definitely hadn't been there during their confrontation. They'd staged a fight, with themselves as the victims. "Thank God you got here," Brandon said. His voice pitched perfectly to convey both relief and lingering fear. This man broke into the executive floor. When we confronted him, he became violent. Miss Sodas. Ellen Dada. Lang tried to intervene, and he attacked us both. Ethan's stomach dropped. "That's not—" "He was armed," Derek added, pointing at the wrench still in Ethan's hand. "He threatened us with that. Said he'd kill us if we didn't give him access to the company servers." "That's a lie." Ethan's voice came out too loud, too desperate. He could hear how he sounded guilty, panicked, exactly like someone caught in the act. Patterson looked at Victoria. "Miss Lang, is this true? Did this man attack you?" Victoria's face had gone pale. Her eyes darted between Brandon, Derek, and the security guards. Ethan watched her calculate the situation, watched her realize the trap they were all in. If she told the truth, she'd have to explain why 2 board members were trying to force her to sign documents in a bathroom at midnight. She'd have to admit to whatever corporate scandal or power struggle had led to this moment. She'd have to expose herself, her company, to scrutiny she clearly wanted to avoid. Victoria's voice faltered. "I need to speak with my attorney." Brandon stepped forward, his expression the perfect mask of concern. "She's in shock. This man assaulted her. You can see the blood on her face. He did that." Ethan pointed at Brandon. "I saw him hit her." "Officer, he's clearly disturbed," Derek said calmly. "I think we should call the police. This is beyond building security." Patterson nodded slowly. His partner was already on the radio. "Dispatch, we need NYPD at Glasswell Tower, 18th floor. Possible assault. Possible attempted burglary." "No," Ethan said. "No, this isn't what happened." "Miss Lang." "Tell them." Victoria looked at him. In her eyes, Ethan saw something that hollowed out his chest: guilt, fear, and the terrible calculation of self-preservation. "I'm sorry," she whispered, so quietly that maybe only he heard it. Then she turned away. Within minutes, 2 police officers arrived. Ethan was read his rights, while Patterson zip-tied his wrists behind his back. The wrench was bagged as evidence. His toolbox was confiscated. "Do you have anyone you want us to call?" one of the officers asked, as they walked him toward the elevator. Ethan thought of Lila, asleep in their apartment. He thought of Mrs. Chen, the elderly neighbor who sometimes watched her. He thought of his supervisor at Metro Building Services, who would fire him the moment he heard about this. "No," he said. "There's nobody." They took him out through the loading dock, the service entrance he'd used hundreds of times. Now he was leaving through it in handcuffs, escorted by police, while Brandon and Derek stood in the executive lobby giving their statements. He caught one last glimpse of Victoria through the glass doors. She stood alone near the security desk, her torn jacket wrapped around her shoulders, watching him being led away. She didn't look away. That was something, at least. She watched until he was in the police car, and the doors closed and she disappeared from view. Ethan leaned his head back against the seat. He tried to do the right thing. He tried to help someone who needed it, and he'd lost everything. The holding cell at the Midtown North Precinct smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Ethan sat on the metal bench, his work coveralls still damp from the leaking pipe he'd never finished fixing, and watched the clock on the wall tick toward 4 a.m. They'd processed him 3 hours ago. Fingerprints, mugshot, phone call he didn't make. The charges were still pending: assault, trespassing, attempted extortion. Brandon and Derek had crafted their story carefully, turning Ethan's intervention into an attempted shakedown. According to their statement, he'd demanded $50,000 in cash to keep quiet about seeing Miss Lang in a compromising position. A compromising position. The phrase made him sick. At 6 a.m., they released him on his own recognizance, no bail, but a court date in 3 weeks. The desk sergeant handed him a clear plastic bag containing his wallet, keys, and phone. 17 missed calls from Metro Building Services. None from Victoria Lang. The subway ride home took 40 minutes. Ethan sat in the corner of the car, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of orange and gold through the scratched windows. Beautiful morning. Worst day of his life. Mrs. Chen opened her apartment door before he could knock. Lila was asleep on the couch behind her, still in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mr. Cole," Mrs. Chen said softly. Her face was lined with worry, and something else, the careful distance of someone reconsidering an arrangement. "Your work called many times. They say you don't come back. They say police." "Is true?" "It's complicated, Mrs. Chen. Is true or not true?" Ethan looked at his daughter sleeping on the couch. "I tried to help someone. It went wrong." Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. "I watch Lila today. Tomorrow. I think maybe you find different arrangement." "My daughter say is not safe." The words landed like a physical blow. "Mrs. Chen, I would never." "I know." Her voice was gentle but firm. "But my daughter worry." "You understand." He understood. He understood perfectly. In 24 hours, he'd gone from invisible to visible in all the wrong ways. Ethan carried Lila home. She woke up in the hallway, confused. "Daddy? Why are you carrying me?" "Just wanted to, baby. Go back to sleep." She did, her head heavy on his shoulder. He laid her in her bed, the twin mattress they'd bought at a church rummage sale. Covered in sheets with cartoon dinosaurs. Her room was barely bigger than a closet, but they'd made it work. Drawings taped to the walls. A nightlight shaped like a moon. Her books stacked in a plastic crate. All of it suddenly felt fragile. Temporary. His phone rang. Metro Building Services. He let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, he listened to the message. "Mr. Cole, this is Patricia from HR. We've been informed of an incident at Glasswell Tower involving your arrest. Effective immediately, your contract is terminated. Please return your access badge and uniform to the office by end of business today. Your final paycheck will be mailed." Ethan deleted the message, sat on the floor of his kitchenette. stared at the bills on the counter: rent due in 1 week, electricity bill past due, Lila's school supply fees. By 10 a.m., he'd called 6 different property management companies looking for work. By noon, he'd learned that news traveled fast in the building maintenance world. Nobody wanted to hire someone arrested for assaulting a client. Didn't matter that charges were pending, not filed. Didn't matter that he hadn't done what they said he did. He was toxic now, untouchable. The warehouse called at 1 p.m. His second shift was eliminated restructuring, they said. But he knew better. Lila woke up at 2 p.m., hungry and cheerful. She sat at the tiny table while Ethan made her a grilled cheese sandwich and sliced an apple into careful segments. She told him about the game she'd played with Mrs. Chen, something involving cards and numbers. She asked if they could go to the park later. Maybe tomorrow, sweetheart. You say that yesterday. I know. I'm sorry. She studied him with those serious eyes, Sarah's eyes. Are you sad, Daddy? Just tired. Mrs. Chen say you help somebody. Say you a hero. Ethan's throat tightened. I'm not a hero, Lila. I'm just your dad. She climbed into his lap. Grilled cheese forgotten. That's the best kind. He held her while she ate her sandwich, feeling the weight of everything pressing down: the lost jobs, the pending charges, the growing certainty that he'd made a catastrophic mistake, not in what he'd done, but in believing that doing the right thing mattered when you had no power to protect yourself. That night, after Lila was asleep, Ethan sat in the dark and calculated how long their savings would last. 2 months, maybe 3, if he cut everything to the bone. Then what? There were shelters, public assistance. He'd sworn he'd never let it come to that. But pride seemed like a luxury he could no longer afford. His phone lit up with a notification, an email. The subject line read, Glasswell Corporation Media Statement. He opened it. A press release, distributed to major news outlets. Glasswell Corporation takes all allegations of workplace misconduct seriously. Following an incident on Tuesday evening, a contract worker has been arrested for assault and attempted extortion. The matter is under investigation. We are cooperating fully with law enforcement. His name wasn't mentioned. It didn't need to be. Anyone in the industry would figure it out. Would see the subtext. Would understand that Ethan Cole was finished. He closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he'd figure out next steps. Tomorrow, he'd start the desperate scramble of job hunting, of finding care for Lila, of holding together a life that was rapidly coming apart. Tonight, he just sat in the dark and wondered if Victoria Lang was sleeping soundly in whatever expensive apartment CEOs lived in, if she'd spared even a single thought for the man who'd tried to save her and lost everything in the process. 11 days passed. Ethan stopped counting the rejections after 23. He took what work he could find: cash jobs that didn't require background checks. Tuesday, he helped a friend of a friend move furniture for $80. Wednesday, he fixed a neighbor's washing machine for $40. Thursday, he drove for a rideshare service until the app rejected his background check and deactivated his account. Lila went to school wearing sneakers that were too small. He tried to stretch them with newspaper and water, an old trick his mother had taught him. It hadn't worked well. Mrs. Chen's daughter had indeed insisted on different arrangements. Now Lila went to an after-school program that cost $60 a day, money Ethan didn't have but borrowed from the advance on a payday loan at 29% interest. The math was simple and devastating. He was drowning, and the water was rising faster every day. On the 11th night, Ethan was outside their apartment building, working on a neighbor's Honda Civic by the light of a battery-powered lamp. The alternator belt needed replacing a $40 job that he'd do for $20 in cash. His hands were black with grease, his back aching from leaning over the engine block. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, probably another debt collector. Another company calling to tell him his application had been rejected. But something made him swipe to accept. Hello? Ethan Cole? A woman's voice. Professional. Familiar, in a way he couldn't immediately place. Who's asking? This is Victoria Lang. Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. Around him, the street sounds of the city traffic, distant sirens, someone's music playing seemed to fade into white noise. I don't have anything to say to you. Please. Don't hang up. Her voice was different from that night, steadier, but also containing something that sounded like exhaustion. I know I don't deserve your time. I know what my silence cost you. But I need you to listen. Your silence cost me everything, Ethan said. The anger he'd been suppressing for 11 days crystallized into something cold and hard. I lost my jobs. Both of them. My daughter's wearing shoes that don't fit because I can't afford new ones. The woman who watched her won't anymore because she thinks I'm dangerous. All because I tried to help you, and you let them turn me into the criminal. I know. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. I know, and I'm sorry. There's no apology adequate for what I allowed to happen to you. But I'm trying to make it right. I'm gathering evidence against Brandon Marks and Derek Shaw. I have proof of what they were really doing that night. Proof of fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. But I need a witness. I need you. Ethan laughed bitterly. You want me to testify? Stick my neck out again for you? After what happened last time, I want to clear your name. I want to get you, your jobs back, your reputation back. I want to put the people who did this to you, to us in prison where they belong. But I can't do it alone. Why now? Why 11 days later? There was a pause. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because it took me this long to find evidence that would protect both of us. And because every day that passed, I felt more ashamed of my cowardice. You stood up for me when you had everything to lose. I'm asking for a chance to do the same for you. What kind of evidence? Financial records? Emails? Security footage? From that night? The real footage? Before they edited it. Brandon and Derek have been systematically embezzling from Glasswell for over 2 years. That night, they were trying to force me to sign a document that would have authorized a transfer of $1.2 million to an offshore account. They'd already laid the groundwork to pin the whole scheme on me if anyone investigated. I'm the CEO, the perfect scapegoat. Why were you there at midnight? Brandon called me. Said there was an emergency with our Singapore office. Needed my approval on documents immediately. When I got there, Derek was waiting. They'd planned it carefully late enough that the building was empty, isolated enough that nobody would interrupt. Except you did. Ethan closed his eyes. He thought of Lila, asleep upstairs. He thought of the legal fees he couldn't afford, the court date approaching, the charges that would follow him forever even if they were eventually dropped. If I do this, if I testify, what happens to me? The charges against you will be dropped. I have corporate counsel ready to negotiate with the district attorney. But more than that, if we do this right. If we expose what Brandon and Derek did, you become the witness who helped take down corporate fraud. Not the guy who assaulted a CEO. The narrative changes. Narratives, Ethan said. That's what this is to you people. Stories you tell to make reality fit what you need it to be. You're right, Victoria said quietly. And for 11 days, I've been living with the story I let them tell about you. I can't sleep. I can't look at myself in the mirror. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me fight back. With you. Not against you. Ethan looked up at the building, at the window of his apartment where a small nightlight glowed Lila's dinosaur lamp. He thought about the man he wanted to be for her. Not perfect. Not fearless. But someone who, when given a second chance to do the right thing, took it. When do we start? He heard Victoria's exhale of relief. Tomorrow. I'll send a car to pick you up. And Ethan? Thank you. For that night. And for this. Thank you for being brave enough to believe in justice twice. After she hung up, Ethan sat in the cold night air. Grease still on his hands. and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in 11 days. Hope. It was fragile, uncertain, but it was there. The car that picked up Ethan the next morning was a black sedan with tinted windows, anonymous, expensive. Nothing like the subway rides he was used to. The driver said nothing during the 20-minute trip to Lower Manhattan, dropping him at an address that turned out to be a law office on the 42nd floor of a glass tower. Victoria met him in the lobby. She wore a navy suit, her hair pulled back severely, but there were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. A thin scar marked her lower lip, the split from that night, not quite healed. "Thank you for coming," she said, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, professional, but he felt it tremble slightly. "I'm not doing this for you," Ethan said. He didn't take her hand. "I'm doing it because my daughter deserves a father who doesn't have an assault charge hanging over him. I understand." Victoria lowered her hand. "Come with me." She led him through the law office to a conference room where two people waited, a man in his 60s with steel gray hair, and a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes behind designer glasses. "This is Robert Holloway, my corporate attorney, and Jennifer Reeves, a criminal defense lawyer I've retained on your behalf. They're going to walk you through what we've found and what we need from you." The next 3 hours were a masterclass in corporate crime. Robert spread documents across the conference table, spreadsheets, wire transfer records, email chains. Brandon Marks and Derek Shaw created a shell company called Meridian Holdings 18 months ago. On paper, it's a consulting firm that Glasswell hired for strategic advisory services. In reality, it's a funnel. Over the past 2 years, they've redirected approximately $2.3 million from Glasswell accounts into Meridian, then moved the money through 3 offshore accounts before it landed in their personal holdings. "That's what they were trying to cover up that night?" Ethan asked. "Partially," Jennifer said. "But there's more." They needed Victoria to authorize one final transfer, a big one. $1.2 million that would complete their exit strategy. After that, they planned to expose the fraud themselves and frame Victoria as the mastermind. The CEO who got greedy, who used her position to embezzle millions. They'd already created a false trail of evidence, fake emails from her accounts, documents with her forged signature. Victoria's voice was hollow. "I would have been investigated, charged, probably convicted. They'd have walked away as the whistleblowers who saved the company." Robert pulled out a tablet and opened a video file. "We've obtained the original security footage from that night, the raw files from the server, before they were edited." He pressed play. Grainy black and white video showed the hallway outside the women's restroom. Timestamp: 11:40. 3 p.m. Brandon and Derek escorting Victoria from the elevator, one on each side of her. Her body language was clearly resistant, pulling back, trying to move away. Derek's hand was on her elbow, gripping tightly. They disappeared into the restroom. At 11:51, Ethan appeared in frame, approaching the restroom. He paused outside the door, clearly listening. Then he entered. 3 minutes of nothing. Then Ethan emerged, supporting Victoria. Her face was visible in the frame, the split lip, the torn jacket. The expression of someone who'd just escaped something terrible. At 11:56, security arrived. Brandon and Derek came out into the hallway. And there, clearly visible, Derek touched his own face, pressing hard enough to leave a mark. Brandon grabbed his own jacket and tore the sleeve deliberately. They staged their injuries while security was escorting Ethan and Victoria to the elevator. "This footage," Jennifer said, "combined with the financial records, is enough to build a criminal case against both men. But here's the problem. Right now, you're still the suspect in an open investigation. If we go to the police with this, Brandon and Derek's attorneys will argue that the footage has been tampered with, that the financial documents are fabricated, that this is a desperate attempt by a guilty party to shift blame. So what do we need?" "Your testimony," Robert said. "Your clear, credible account of what happened that night. You're a witness who has nothing to gain. By lying, you're not an employee of Glasswell. You have no financial stake in the outcome. When combined with this evidence, your testimony makes the case bulletproof. Ethan studied the documents spread across the table. Numbers that represented more money than he'd earn in a lifetime, deployed casually for personal gain by men who thought their positions made them untouchable. What happens to me if I do this? I can't afford to be tied up in court for months. I need to work. I need to take care of my daughter. Jennifer leaned forward. I've already negotiated with the district attorney's office. The charges against you will be dropped immediately once we present this evidence. You'll be reclassified as a witness, which comes with certain protections. Any employer who denied you work based on the arrest will be contacted and informed that the charges were false. That's not a perfect solution for your reputation, but it's something, and Victoria has agreed to compensate you for your lost wages during this period. I don't want her money. Then consider it back pay for the trauma and damage to your life that her initial silence caused, Robert said. Consider it restitution. Consider it whatever makes you comfortable accepting it. But don't let pride get in the way of taking care of your daughter. The words hit home. Pride was a luxury. Lila needed shoes that fit, needed after-school care he could afford, needed a father who wasn't drowning. When do we go to the police? Ethan asked. Not the police, Victoria said. Not yet. First, we go to the board of directors. If we can get them to see the evidence, to understand what Brandon and Derek have done, then they'll force the company to act. Glasswell's leadership will support the criminal prosecution instead of fighting it. It's the difference between us looking like disgruntled individuals, making accusations, and looking like a corporation pursuing justice for fraud committed against it. When? The quarterly board meeting is in 4 days, Robert said. That's our window. Brandon will be there. He's a board member himself, following in his father's footsteps. We present the evidence, we present your testimony, and we let the board decide whether to protect their company or protect one of their own. Ethan looked at each of them in turn, then back at the video, frozen on the image of Derek deliberately creating the injury he'd later blame on Ethan. 4 days, he said. Okay. What do I need to do? Jennifer pulled out a legal pad. First, you're going to tell me everything that happened that night. Every detail, every word you remember. We're going to go through it until your statement is clear and consistent, because when you walk into that boardroom, Brandon Marks is going to call you a liar to your face, and you need to be ready. Ethan thought of Lila, of the way she'd hugged him this morning and whispered, "You got this, Daddy." Even though she had no idea what he was about to do. "I'm ready," he said, and for the first time in 11 days, he believed it. The Glasswell Corporation boardroom was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the city sprawling beneath them like a kingdom. The conference table was solid walnut, long enough to seat 20. Oil paintings of former board chairmen lined the walls, stern-faced men in dark suits, judging the present from their positions in history. Ethan Cole sat at one end of the table, acutely aware of his department store suit and the scuff marks on his shoes. Victoria sat beside him, her corporate armor perfectly in place. Robert Holloway had positioned himself strategically with a laptop and a projector, ready to present evidence. Across the table, Brandon Marks lounged in his chair with the ease of someone who'd grown up in rooms like this. Derek Shaw sat 2 seats away, his expression neutral, but his eyes calculating. Both men had brought attorneys expensive suits and leather briefcases, prepared for war. At the head of the table sat Richard Marks, Brandon's father and chairman of the board. 73 years old, steel gray hair, a face carved by decades of making decisions that moved millions of dollars and thousands of lives. Beside him were 7 other board members, a collection of corporate veterans, financial experts, and legacy appointments who represented the old guard of American business. Richard called the meeting to order at precisely 10 a.m. "We're here to address a serious matter that's come to the board's attention. Victoria, you've requested this emergency session. The floor is yours." Victoria stood. Her hands were steady as she activated the projector. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'm about to present involves fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy that has cost this company over $2 million and nearly destroyed both my career and an innocent man's life. Brandon's attorney immediately objected. Mr. Chairman, this is highly irregular. If Miss Lang has accusations to make, they should go through proper legal channels, not be aired in. The board has a fiduciary duty to hear evidence of financial crimes against the company. Robert interjected smoothly. We're not here to try anyone, merely to present facts that the board needs to know. Richard's expression was unreadable. Continue, Miss Lang. For the next 20 minutes, Victoria walked the board through the evidence. The shell company, the wire transfers, the systematic embezzlement. She showed them bank records, email chains, where Brandon and Derek discussed project liquidation and asset extraction. She showed them the forged documents that would have framed her. The board members' faces shifted from skepticism to concern to anger. But Brandon remained calm, almost amused. These are serious allegations, Richard said finally. His voice carried no emotion. He could have been discussing quarterly earnings. Brandon, do you have a response? Brandon stood, straightening his tie. Dad, Mr. Chairman, this is a desperate attempt by someone whose own financial irregularities are about to be exposed. Yes, I created Meridian Holdings. It's a legitimate consulting firm that provides valuable services to multiple companies, including Glasswell. Every transaction was authorized. Every payment was documented. What Victoria is presenting is a twisted interpretation of standard business practices, wrapped in conspiracy theory, because she knows her own embezzlement is about to come to light. Then explain the security footage, Victoria said coldly. Robert switched to the video. The boardroom fell silent as they watched Brandon and Derek forcing Victoria into the restroom, Ethan entering, the 4-minute gap, then the deliberate self-inflicted injuries. When it ended, Derek spoke for the first time. That footage has obviously been edited, manipulated. In the age of deepfakes and digital alteration, video evidence is essentially worthless. The metadata is intact, Robert said. We have testimony from the security company that maintains Glasswell's system, confirming this is the original, unaltered file from their servers. What's more, we have the edited version that was provided to police. We can demonstrate exactly where and how it was modified. Brandon's jaw tightened. So you have video that can be interpreted multiple ways. That's not proof of anything. Then let's add context, Victoria said. She looked at Ethan. Mr. Cole, would you please tell the board what happened on the night of September 14th? Ethan stood. His legs felt unsteady. 11 pairs of eyes focused on him, some curious, some hostile, all evaluating whether he was credible or just another piece in a game of corporate chess. He began with the water fountain, described the sounds he'd heard, the decision to intervene. When he reached the part where he entered the restroom, his voice steadied. Miss Lang was bleeding. She was terrified. These two men had papers they were forcing her to sign. When I told them to let her go, Brandon called me a nobody. Derek threatened to call security and have me arrested. They offered me a way out, walk away, forget what I saw. But I couldn't do that. So I helped her leave. And then what happened? Robert prompted. Security arrived. Brandon and Derek told them I'd attacked them. They showed injuries they'd given themselves after I left with Miss Lang. I was arrested. Lost both my jobs. Couldn't find work anywhere, because word spread that I'd assaulted a client. For 11 days, I couldn't afford proper food for my daughter. Couldn't pay people to care for her while I looked for work. All because I tried to stop two men from hurting someone. Silence filled the room. One of the board members, a woman named Patricia Wells, leaned forward. Mr. Cole, why should we believe you? You're facing criminal charges. You have every reason to lie to protect yourself. Ma'am, the charges were filed based on false statements, Ethan said. I'm not here to protect myself. I'm here because what happened to me is nothing compared to what these two men have stolen from this company. I'm a contractor who makes $18 an hour. They embezzled $2 million. If you're asking who has more motive to lie, I'd suggest looking at who has more to lose. Brandon's carefully maintained composure cracked. This is absurd. You're taking the word of a violent criminal and a CEO with an axe to grind over two board members with decades of service. Service? Victoria's voice cut like a blade. You call embezzlement service? You call trying to frame me for your crimes service? I call it business. Brandon shot back. Something you've never understood. You got this position because the board needed to check a diversity box, not because you earned it, and when your incompetence started showing. When the numbers didn't add up, we did what we had to do to protect the company from your failures. The mask had slipped. In his anger, Brandon had revealed the contempt beneath the professional exterior. Richard's face had gone pale. Brandon. That's enough. No, Dad. It's not enough. Brandon's voice rose. I've watched you coddle her. Watched this board make excuse after excuse for missed targets and failed initiatives. All because you're terrified of looking like the old boys club. Well, here's the truth. Some people are meant to lead, and some people are meant to follow. She's a follower who got promoted beyond her capabilities, and when we tried to fix the damage, this whole circus started. In the silence that followed, Ethan heard the city outside car horns, distant sirens, the ambient sound of millions of people going about their lives, unaware that in this room, in this moment, several careers were ending and others were being reborn. Richard stood slowly. His voice, when he spoke, was quietly devastating. Jennifer, please call building security. Then call the NYPD. Tell them, we need officers here to take statements regarding corporate fraud and false criminal accusations. Dad, you will address me as Mr. Chairman. And you will remain seated until the police arrive. Brandon's attorney tried one more time. Mr. Chairman, I strongly advise against— Your advice is noted and rejected, Richard said. He looked at Ethan. Mr. Cole, on behalf of Glasswell Corporation, I apologize for what you've endured. We will be issuing a public statement clearing your name and requesting that all charges against you be dropped immediately. We will also be discussing appropriate compensation for your damages. He turned to Victoria. Miss Lang, I owe you an apology as well. This board failed you. I failed you. That ends today. The police arrived within 15 minutes. Brandon and Derek were escorted from the boardroom in handcuffs, not yet arrested, but detained for questioning pending the district attorney's review of the evidence. Ethan watched them go. Brandon's face was red with rage and humiliation. Derek had gone pale. All his calculated composure evaporated. They didn't look like masters of the universe anymore. They looked like what they were, criminals who'd gotten caught. The board meeting continued for another hour. Ethan was asked to step outside while they discussed internal matters. But through the heavy door, he could hear raised voices, heated arguments about liability and responsibility, and how this had been allowed to happen. Victoria emerged just after noon. She looked exhausted, her professional mask finally cracking to reveal the toll this had taken. The board voted unanimously to terminate Brandon and Derek's positions and to cooperate fully with criminal prosecution. They're bringing in an independent forensic accounting firm to audit the last 3 years of financials. What about you? Ethan asked. I keep my job. For now. There will be questions about why I didn't report the incident immediately, why I let you take the fall even briefly. Fair questions. But Richard convinced the board that I was also a victim here, that Brandon and Derek had leverage over me that I was trying to navigate. It's not entirely true, but it's true enough. They rode the elevator down in silence. In the lobby, Victoria's hand touched his arm briefly. Come with me. There's someone I want you to meet. She led him to a coffee shop 2 blocks away. At a corner table sat a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and graying hair. Ethan Cole. This is Margaret Finley. She's the Director of Human Resources at Glasswell. Margaret shook his hand firmly. Mr. Cole, I've been authorized to offer you a position as Assistant Facilities Director at Glasswell. Starting salary is $72,000 annually, full benefits, and a $10,000 signing bonus as compensation for your lost wages. You'd oversee our building maintenance contracts across all our properties in the tri-state area. Ethan stared at her. $72,000? It's commensurate with your experience and the level of responsibility. We're also prepared to include tuition reimbursement if you'd like to complete your engineering degree. The company will cover up to $15,000 per year in educational expenses. Finish his degree. Earn enough to move Lila into a 2-bedroom apartment. Stop living paycheck to paycheck. Stop counting pennies for milk and bread. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Victoria said quietly. Say yes, and let something good come from that terrible night. Let us try to make this right. Ethan thought of Lila, waiting for him at the after-school program he'd scraped together money to pay for this week. He thought of Mrs. Chen, who'd politely but firmly asked him to find other childcare. He thought of the past 11 days, the shame, the fear, the grinding certainty that he'd ruined their lives by trying to do the right thing. Yes, he said. His voice cracked slightly. Yes. I accept. Margaret smiled. Excellent. Can you start Monday? Monday, Ethan repeated. He looked at Victoria. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said. You still have to deal with the press coverage, the questions, the attention. Your life is about to get complicated in new ways. She was right. But for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, complicated felt manageable. The story broke on a Wednesday afternoon. Glasswell executives arrested for embezzlement. Maintenance worker, cleared of false charges, ran across multiple news outlets. By evening, Ethan's phone was flooded with interview requests. Friend requests from people he didn't know. Messages of support from strangers. Victoria had crafted the media narrative carefully. Ethan Cole, single father and maintenance worker, had witnessed a crime and intervened to save a woman in danger. He'd been falsely accused by corrupt executives trying to cover their tracks. Justice had prevailed. The little guy had won. It was a story the media loved. By Friday, Ethan had been interviewed by 3 local news stations, 2 newspapers, and 1 national morning show. Each time, he told the same truth. He'd done what anyone should do when they see someone in trouble. He wasn't a hero. He was just a dad trying to teach his daughter right from wrong. The public reaction was overwhelming. A GoFundMe started by someone he'd never met raised $43,000 in 3 days. The building management company that had blacklisted him issued a public apology. Metro Building Services called to offer him his old job back, an offer he politely declined. On Monday, Ethan started at Glasswell. His office was small, but had a window, a real window, with sunlight. His desk had a computer, a phone with his own extension, and business cards that read Ethan Cole, Assistant Director of Facilities. He hung one photo. Lila, grinning, missing her 2 front teeth, holding her stuffed rabbit. Victoria stopped by his office on his second day. How are you adjusting? Still feels surreal. Last month I was fixing leaking toilets. Now I'm managing the people who fix leaking toilets. You know more about facilities maintenance than most people in management. You've done the work. You've lived it. That makes you better qualified than someone who just has an MBA. She paused. I also wanted to tell you Brandon and Derek took plea deals. Brandon gets 4 years in federal prison for fraud and embezzlement. Derek gets 3 years and has to pay full restitution. It's not as much as I wanted, but it's something. And you? The board conducted a full review of my tenure as CEO. I survived, barely. But I'm on probation, essentially. One mistake, and I'm out. She smiled wryly. Turns out, being a victim doesn't shield you from accountability for your own missteps. Who knew? Will you stay? I think so. This company needs reform, real oversight, real accountability. I can do that work. Or try to, anyway. She studied him. And you? Really, are you okay? Ethan thought about it. I'm still angry sometimes. Angry it happened at all. Angry it took so long to fix. But Lila and I are going apartment hunting this weekend. Looking for a 2-bedroom place with a real kitchen and windows in both rooms. She wants to paint her new room purple. So yeah, I think I'm okay. I'm getting there. That Saturday, he took Lila to a shoe store, a real shoe store. Not a discount outlet or thrift shop. Let her try on 5 different pairs before choosing the ones she loved. Purple sneakers with silver laces. They fit perfect, Daddy. She ran back and forth across the store, testing them. Ethan paid with his new employee credit card, watching his daughter run, thinking about how close they'd come to losing everything. How one choice pushing open that bathroom door had destroyed his life and then rebuilt it into something better. On the way home, Lila asked, "Are you still sad sometimes?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But mostly, I'm grateful." "For what?" "For you. For second chances. For knowing that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it costs us, that's what matters." She squeezed his hand. "You're the best, Daddy." He squeezed back. "You're the best daughter." Behind them, the city carried on, millions of people, making choices, living consequences, trying to navigate the complicated space between survival and integrity. Ethan was just one of them now. One small story in an infinite collection of stories. But it was his story, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like one worth living. 3 months later, Ethan stood in the hallway of Glasswell Tower's 18th floor, the same hallway where everything had changed. The water fountain had been replaced with a more efficient model. The restroom had been renovated, all new fixtures. You'd never know what had happened here unless someone told you. He'd come back for an evening inspection. His first time working late since starting the new position. The building was quiet. Most employees gone home. His footsteps echoed on the polished marble. He could have delegated this inspection. That was his job now, managing, directing, overseeing. But some part of him needed to be here, needed to stand in this space and reclaim it from memory. The elevator dinged. Victoria stepped out, carrying a briefcase, and looking surprised to see him. "Ethan. Working late? Could ask you the same thing. Old habits." She set down her briefcase. "I heard about the scholarship fund." "That was generous of you." Ethan had donated half of the GoFundMe money to establish a scholarship for children of low-income workers pursuing college degrees. The rest had gone into a savings account for Lila's future. Seemed like the right thing to do. "Pass it forward." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Victoria said, "I think about that night sometimes. Wonder what would have happened if you'd walked away. If you'd chosen differently, you'd probably be in prison," Ethan said. "And I'd still be working night shifts, living paycheck to paycheck. Brandon and Derek would have gotten away with it. One choice. One moment of deciding to get involved instead of staying invisible." She shook her head. "Most people would have walked away. Maybe. Or maybe most people would have done what I did, and we just don't hear those stories because they don't end well. I got lucky. The evidence existed. You found it. Things worked out. They don't always. Does that mean you regret it?" Ethan considered. "No. Even when I thought I'd lost everything, when I couldn't find work, couldn't pay rent, couldn't see any way forward, I didn't regret opening that door. I regretted that the world made that choice so costly. But I never regretted making it." Victoria smiled slightly. "Your daughter is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She's the reason for all of it, why I work, why I try, why I care about being someone she can be proud of." The elevator dinged again. A maintenance worker stepped out, young guy, maybe 25, wearing the same type of coveralls Ethan used to wear. He nodded at them nervously, unsure why management was lingering in the hallway. Ethan smiled at him. "Evening." The third-floor compressor acting up again? Yes, sir. Just came to check the pressure readings. Let me know if you need anything. I've got tools in my office if yours aren't cutting it. The worker relaxed slightly. Thanks, Mr. Cole. After he'd moved down the hallway, Victoria said quietly, You were him 3 months ago. I know. That's why I want to make sure he doesn't end up where I did, invisible, expendable. One bad situation away from losing everything. They walked to the elevator together. The doors opened, and they stepped inside. Going down? Victoria asked. Always, Ethan said, then smiled. But at least now, I'm choosing to. Later that evening, Ethan picked up Lila from their new apartment, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with actual counter space, windows that let in morning light. She'd painted her room purple with help from Mrs. Chen, who'd quietly apologized and resumed watching Lila on the evenings Ethan worked late. They walked to the small park 3 blocks away, Lila chattering about her day at school, about the science project she was planning, about her friend Maya, who was having a birthday party next week. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. They sat on a bench, sharing a bag of apple slices Ethan had packed. Daddy? Lila asked, swinging her legs. What does integrity mean? Where'd you hear that word? Mrs. Chen said you have it. She said that's why everything got better. Ethan thought about how to explain it to a 7-year-old. Integrity means doing the right thing even when it's hard, even when doing the wrong thing would be easier or safer. It means your actions match your beliefs. Is that why you helped that lady? Even though it made everything bad? Yeah, baby, that's why. And now everything's good again? Now everything's better than it was before, Ethan corrected gently. But that part was lucky. The important thing isn't that it worked out, it's that trying to help was the right choice, no matter what happened after. Lila nodded seriously, processing this. Then, I'm glad you have integrity. Me too, sweetheart. They sat together as the sun dipped below the buildings, as the streetlights flickered on, as the city shifted from day to night. In his pocket, Ethan's phone buzzed a text from Margaret about a meeting tomorrow. Routine business, the normal concerns of a normal job. He looked at his daughter, at her purple sneakers and her gap-toothed smile, at the life they were building together one day at a time. He thought about the man he'd been 3 months ago, desperate, drowning, invisible. He thought about the choice he'd made in a fluorescent-lit hallway, and all the choices that had followed. Not all of them had been right. Not all of them had worked out. But they'd been his choices, made for reasons he could defend, made by someone trying to be a person his daughter could admire. That, Ethan realized, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Come on, he said, standing and offering his hand. Let's go home. Lila took his hand, and together they walked into the evening, into their new life, into whatever came next. The city lights glittered around them like promises,